The sound of my own heartbeat was a sterile electronic beep, a rhythmic countdown to an ending I hadn't chosen. I lay in the hospital bed, the sheets stiff and smelling of industrial bleach, my arms pinned by IV lines that dripped a cold, saline chill into my veins. I was Augustus. I was 82 years old. To the nurses who bustled in and out, I was just another withered body in room 304, a fall risk with a history of cardiac events. But inside this failing shell was a mind that had synthesized 30 industrial patents. I was a chemical engineer who had developed the solvents that cleaned the Golden Gate Bridge and the ink compounds used by the Treasury. I understood the molecular structure of permanence, and I understood with terrifying clarity the volatility of the people standing over my bed. My son, Nathan, paced the small room like a caged animal. He was sweating, despite the aggressive air conditioning. He kept checking the door, his eyes darting to the hallway every few seconds. His wife, Erica, stood by the window, her back to me, clutching a thick leather portfolio so tightly her knuckles were white. "It's just a formality, Cad," Nathan said, his voice trembling. He turned to me, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace of pain. "The doctors say if you have another episode, you might not wake up. We need to secure the estate." I looked at him. I looked at the boy I had taught to catch fireflies in the backyard, the boy I had put through engineering school, the boy who had gambled away his tuition money and lied about it. I saw the layers of guilt and greed warring behind his eyes. They had brought me here 3 days ago. Sudden onset confusion, they told the ER doctors. He's hallucinating. I knew now that the confusion wasn't natural. It tasted bitter, metallic, like crushed datura seeds. They had drugged me. They had induced a delirium to get me committed, to isolate me from my lawyers, to create a medical record of incompetence. And now they were making their move. Erica turned from the window. She walked to the bed. She didn't look at my face. She looked at the tray table. She placed a document on it. It wasn't a medical directive. I saw the header: Irrevocable Transfer of Deed and Asset Liquidation Authority. They weren't trying to save the company. They were trying to liquidate it.
They wanted to sell my patent portfolio, my life's work, to a competitor for a quick cash infusion to cover Nathan's gambling debts and Erica's lifestyle. They were trying to strip mine my legacy before my heart stopped beating. I stared at the paper, the letters swimming before my tired eyes, and I realized that the son I raised was effectively holding a pillow over my face, waiting for me to stop kicking. I wanted to tear the IVs out. I wanted to scream until the security guards came. But if you've ever realized that the people you love are just waiting for your seat at the table to empty, hit that subscribe button. Because what Nathan didn't know was that I wasn't confused. I was a chemist, and I had brought my own pen. "Sign it, old man," Erica whispered. Her mask of kindness had slipped completely, revealing the cold, hard ambition underneath. "Sign it, or we leave you here. We'll tell the doctors you're violent." She thrust a cheap, blue plastic ballpoint pen at me. I looked at the pen. I looked at Nathan. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I let out a cough, a dry, rattling sound that shook my thin frame. I feigned weakness, letting my hand tremble violently as I reached for the document. I can't use that," I wheezed, my voice barely a whisper. "My hand, the arthritis." Erica hissed. "I need my pen," I gasped. "The heavy one, in my jacket pocket. It helps." I pointed a shaking finger at my tweed jacket, which hung on the back of the guest chair. Nathan hesitated. He looked at Erica. She nodded impatiently. Nathan grabbed the jacket. He fished around in the inside pocket and pulled out my fountain pen. Size I. It looked like an expensive, sentimental trinket, an old man's vanity. It was not. It contained a proprietary ink blend I had developed in 1985 for secure interdepartmental memos. It was a fugitive ink based on a thymophthalene compound that reacted with the carbon dioxide in the air. It wrote a deep, rich royal blue. It looked permanent. It looked binding.
But within 4 hours of exposure to air, the pH balance shifted, the color molecule broke down, it faded to absolute invisibility. Nathan uncapped it. He handed it to me. I took the pen. My hand shook, partially from the drug still in my system, but mostly from a rage that burned hotter than any fever. I looked Nathan in the eye one last time. I gave him a final chance to be my son. "Sign it?" I asked softly. "Once ink touches paper, it's done." Nathan swallowed hard.
He looked at the document, then at me. "Just sign it, Dad." He made his choice. I lowered the pen. I pressed the nib to the paper. The blue ink flowed smoothly, a stark contrast to the sterile white page. I signed my name with a flourish I hadn't used in years. Augustus J. Sterling. The signature glistened. It looked authoritative. It looked legal. Erica snatched the paper away before the ink was even dry. She blew on it, checking the signature. "Finally," she breathed. She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask how I felt. She stuffed the document into her designer purse and zipped it shut. "We're going to the lawyer. Rest now, Augustus." "Goodbye, Dad," Nathan mumbled. They turned and walked out. They didn't look back. I listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway. I heard the ding of the elevator. I heard Erica laugh, a sharp, triumphant sound. The room fell silent. I sat up. The effort made my head spin, but I pushed through it. I reached for the call button, but I didn't press it for the nurse. I reached for the pitcher of water on the bedside table. I poured it into the potted plant in the corner, the same place I had been dumping my medicine and tea for the last 24 hours. I was weak, yes, but I wasn't dying. I reached under the mattress. I pulled out my smartphone, which I had hidden there the moment I was admitted. I dialed a number. "Mr. Henderson," I whispered when he answered. My attorney's voice was sharp with worry. "Where are you?" "I'm in room 304, I said, "and I'm awake. It's done." I signed. There was a pause. Then I heard Henderson let out a low whistle. "Yes," I said. "Prepare the trap." I looked at the clock on the wall. The countdown had begun. In 4 hours, their victory would vanish into thin air, and I would be there to watch the panic set in. There is no colder place on earth than a boardroom where a life is being sold for parts. I sat in the adjacent viewing room, a small, soundproofed chamber separated from the main conference room by a pane of one-way glass. The room smelled of ozone and the stale coffee Mr. Henderson had brought me. My hands were resting on the head of my cane, not because I needed it for balance, but because it gave me something to grip to keep from shaking with rage. I had checked myself out of the hospital at dawn against the vehement protests of the nursing staff. Adrenaline is a powerful drug, more potent than anything they had dripped into my veins. I had dressed in my best suit, a charcoal pinstripe that hung loosely on my frame now, the fabric bunching where I had lost weight over the last poisoned month. I looked frail. I looked like a ghost. But my mind was sharp, focused on the scene unfolding on the other side of the glass. Nathan and Erica sat at the head of a long glass table that reflected the sterile fluorescent lights above. They looked like royalty presiding over a banquet. Nathan wore a navy suit I knew he couldn't afford, his hair slicked back, projecting an air of solemn responsibility. Erica was in black, already playing the grieving daughter-in-law, dabbing at dry eyes whenever she thought someone was looking. Across from them sat the buyers, 5 men and women in gray suits, representatives from a massive petrochemical conglomerate that had been trying to buy my patents for a decade. They were sharks, sensing blood in the water. Mr. Henderson sat at the far end of the table, silent, watchful. He caught my eye through the glass, though he couldn't see me, and gave a microscopic nod. It was time. I adjusted the volume on the speaker system that piped the audio from the boardroom into my small cell. "My father's condition has deteriorated rapidly," Nathan was saying, his voice thick with a sorrow so manufactured it made my stomach churn. "The doctors say it's only a matter of days now,
He was lucid for a moment yesterday. The lead buyer asked, a woman with glasses and eyes like flint. He wanted us to liquidate, Nathan lied smoothly, to secure the family legacy. I watched him. I watched the boy I had carried on my shoulders lie about my dying wish to strangers for a paycheck. We understand, the woman said. 12 million, Erica cut in, leaning forward, for the entire solvent portfolio. 12 million? It was a fire sale. The portfolio was worth 50 million conservatively. They were desperate. They needed cash fast, before the gambling debts got up to Nathan, before I woke up, before anyone asked too many questions. That is agreeable, the buyer said, unable to hide her surprise. She glanced at her colleagues. They nodded. They knew a steal when they saw one. Right here, Erica said. She pulled the thick leather folder from her designer bag with a flourish. She placed it on the glass table. She hadn't looked at it since she snatched it from my bedside table in the hospital room.
She hadn't dared to open it, terrified of jinxing the deal, or perhaps just too arrogant to double-check her prize. She opened the folder. She slid the document across the glass to the buyer. Signed and notarized by witness, Erica said, smiling thinly. I leaned forward in my chair, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the mirror. This was it, the moment physics took over. The buyer put on her reading glasses. She looked down at the paper. She frowned. She adjusted her glasses. She flipped the page back and forth. Mr. Sterling, the buyer said, looking up at Nathan. Nathan asked, his smile faltering. No, this document is unsigned, the woman said flatly. Nathan laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. No, it's not. He signed it yesterday. I watched him. There is no signature, the buyer said. She spun the document around and slid it back across the table. Nathan and Erica looked down. The line at the bottom of the page, the line where I had pressed the nib of my heavy brass pen and written Augustus J. Sterling in deep, flowing royal blue ink, was stark, pristine white. It was empty. The fugitive ink had completed its chemical reaction. Over the last 4 hours, exposed to the carbon dioxide in the air, the thymophthalphine compound had broken down. The pH balance had shifted. The color molecule had disintegrated into nothingness. Because it was a fountain pen, there was no indentation on the paper, no ghost of the pressure. It was as if a pen had never touched the page. Erica shrieks, grabbing the paper. She held it up to the light, frantically turning it. He signed it. I saw him. It was blue ink. Well, it's not there now, the buyer said, standing up. She gathered her files. We represent a serious corporation, Mr. Sterling. We don't have time for games. Nathan pleaded, standing up, knocking his chair over. Maybe he used a trick pen. It must be a mistake, the buyer asked coldly. One of the junior executives joked tryly. This meeting is over, the lead buyer said. Call us when you actually own the assets. The buyers walked out. The heavy door clicked shut behind them. The room was silent, save for the heavy breathing of two people whose world had just evaporated. Nathan yelled at Erica, his face turning red. She screamed back. Ink doesn't just rub off. He did something. Gentlemen, Mr. Henderson said calmly from the end of the table. They spun around, remembering he was there.
I think it's time, Henderson said. He looked at the mirror. I stood up. I straightened my jacket. I took my cane in hand. I pushed open the door that connected the viewing room to the boardroom. I stepped out. The sound of my cane tapping on the hardwood floor echoed in the silence. Tap, tap, tap. Nathan froze. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost rising from the grave. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Erica's face drained of all color, leaving her looking like a wax doll left in the sun. Nathan, finally whispered. I'm doing a lot of things, Nathan, I said. My voice was steady, cold, stripped of the weakness I had feigned in the hospital. I'm walking. I'm thinking. Erica stammers, looking from me to the blank paper. Chemistry, I said, walking to the head of the table. Reaction kinetics, a fugitive ink compound I developed in 1985. It reacts with CO2. It fades in 4 hours. I picked up the blank document. I held it up. You tried to sell my life's work while I was still warm, I said softly. You tried to coerce a dying man. Dad, no, Nathan started, stepping toward me. It wasn't like that. We were trying to help. Stop, I commanded. Mr. Henderson stepped forward. He placed a tablet on the glass table. Mr. Sterling, Henderson said. He pressed play. On the screen, grainy but clear, footage from a hidden camera in my hospital room began to play.
I'd installed it in the flower arrangement days ago when I first suspected the tea tasted wrong. The video showed everything. It showed Erica bullying me. It showed her threatening to leave me to rot. It showed Nathan handing me the pen, his face twisted with greed. It captured the coercion perfectly. "This is elder abuse," Mr. Henderson said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Attempted fraud." He pulled a file from his briefcase. "And this," Henderson continued, "is the toxicology report from the blood sample Augustus had sent to an independent lab 2 days ago. It shows high levels of scopolamine and sedatives, drugs he was not prescribed." Henderson looked at them over his glasses. Nathan dropped to his knees. He grumbled. The arrogance, the facade, it all shattered. He grabbed the hem of my jacket. "Dad, no," he sobbed. "It was her idea. I'm in debt. The bookies, they said they'd kill me. I didn't want to hurt you." Erica backed away, shaking her head. "You coward!" I looked down at my son.
I looked at the man who was begging for mercy after trying to erase me. "You handed me the pen, son," I said. "You watched me sign my life away and you didn't blink." I reached into my inside pocket. I pulled out a new document. "This," I said, placing it on the table, "is a revocable trust transfer." I pointed to the signature line. "I signed it this morning," I said. Nathan stared at the paper. He realized what it meant. "You get nothing," I told them. "The house is gone. The accounts are closed." I looked at the door to the lobby. Through the glass, I could see blue uniforms. "The police are in the lobby," I said. "They have the video. They have the toxicology report. You wanted a signature, Nathan." The door opened. 2 officers entered. I watched them handcuff my son. I watched him sob, snot running down his face, begging for a second chance I could not give him, because he had already spent it. I watched Erica screaming that it was a mistake, that she was framed. I turned my back on them. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city skyline, at the steel and glass structures that held millions of lives. I was alone. My heart was broken in a way that medicine could never fix, but I was still the owner of my life. The ink on my legacy was dry, and it would never fade.